The city pulsed like it was alive, its lights flickering through the glass towers as if the skyline itself had a heartbeat. Manhattan after dark was a kingdom of smoke, champagne, and secrets, and Luca Rocco was its unchallenged king. He arrived at the senator's charity gala not to celebrate, but to remind the rich and powerful who truly ran New York. Every movement was calculated, every nod a silent transaction. Around him, women sparkled in diamonds, men boasted in half-truths, and everyone pretended not to notice the sharp-eyed bodyguards shadowing his every step. To most, he was the elegant ghost of the city's underbelly, untouchable, dangerous, sin wrapped in a black tuxedo. To himself, he was simply bored. He'd built an empire of fear, yet tonight, the music and laughter only amplified the emptiness inside him. Until he saw her, she wasn't supposed to be there. Near the edge of the ballroom, where the chandelier's light faded into soft shadow, stood a woman out of place. No diamonds, no calculated smile, just quiet grace. Her pale blue dress brushed her knees, her hair fell in loose waves that caught the light, and her eyes, warm and uncertain, darted toward the exit as if she longed to escape. She was the one thing in the room that didn't belong, and that made her the only thing he wanted. He dismissed his guards with a flick of his wrist and crossed the room, the crowd parting instinctively. When he reached her, he spoke softly, as though afraid a louder sound would break her spell. "This party's too loud." She turned, startled, then curious. "I was just thinking the same thing." Her voice, light, honest, unpolished, slid through him like music in a room that had forgotten silence. He offered a half smile. "Then maybe I'm not the only one here who doesn't enjoy pretending." She tilted her head. "Pretending what? That any of this matters?" For the first time in years, Luca Rocco laughed. They found a small table near the terrace, where the air smelled of roses and city rain. She told him her name, Ellen Thompson, and that she worked at a flower shop in Brooklyn. "I only came because a friend begged me to," she admitted, smiling shyly. "She thought I needed to see how the other half lives. I think I've seen enough." "And?" he asked. Her gaze drifted to the glittering skyline beyond the glass. "I think I prefer petals to diamonds. They wilt, but at least they're honest." Something inside him stirred, a forgotten ache for honesty, for peace. He lied about what he did, claiming he dealt in international trade. She saw through it immediately. "You don't look like a man who sells things," she teased. "You look like someone who owns them." He almost told her the truth then, that he owned everything except peace of mind. Hours passed unnoticed. The noise of the gala faded until the world felt reduced to two voices, two glasses, and the steady rhythm of her laughter. When she finally stood to leave, he surprised himself by asking, "Can I walk you out?" She hesitated, then nodded. Outside, the rain had just begun, painting the pavement silver. She clutched her small purse to her chest. "I live nearby," she said softly. "A few blocks. I could make coffee, if you'd like." The invitation was uncertain, innocent, and it undid him completely. He nodded once. "Lead the way." Her apartment was small, warm, alive with the scent of lavender and soil. Potted plants lined the windowsills. Fairy lights traced the walls. "This is beautiful," he said, meaning it. "It's simple," she replied, hanging her coat. "But it's mine." He stepped closer. "Simple is underrated." For a long moment, neither moved. The storm outside deepened, and thunder rolled through the distance. Her heartbeat fluttered in her throat, visible even in the dim light. "Ellen," he whispered, voice lower than the rain. "Yes? If I kiss you now, will you stop me?" Her breath caught. "No." He kissed her like a man starving for something he didn't know existed. The taste of her lips was rain and warmth and new beginnings. She trembled. Not from fear, but from something purer. He pulled back just enough to see her face, her wide eyes searching his. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. Instead of answering, she reached for him. The world disappeared. The night became a blur of skin and sighs, of whispered names and the slow discovery of a soul beneath the armor. Luca was used to taking. This time, he gave. Every touch was a question, every breath, a vow he didn't understand yet. When she arched beneath him, her fingers clutching his shoulders, as if to hold on to something more than a moment, he knew he was lost. He didn't notice when the storm outside quieted. He only noticed her hand sliding into his, the quiet sound she made when she finally fell asleep against his chest. For the first time in years, Luca Rocco slept without nightmares. Dawn slipped through the curtains like a confession. He woke first. She was still asleep, hair tangled, lashes resting against flushed cheeks. The sheet had fallen low on her back, and for a moment he simply watched, memorizing the peace he'd never known. Then he saw it, a small dark stain against the white linen. Blood. His breath caught. Realization struck with the force of a bullet. She had been untouched. In a life built on sin, her innocence felt like something holy, and he had destroyed it. He sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, staring at the city waking beyond the window. He'd never meant to hurt her. He'd never meant to care. When he finally stood, the decision came instinctively, the only way he knew how to protect what he couldn't keep. He found a notepad on her small kitchen counter, wrote his private number, and beneath it, one single word, mine. He placed it on the pillow beside her, let his gaze linger one last time, and left quietly, the door clicking shut behind him. The rain had stopped. The city looked reborn under the pale sun. But inside Luca Rocco's chest, something dark and unfamiliar bloomed. Not guilt, not lust. Possession, need, fear of losing the only woman who had ever made him feel human. As his driver opened the car door, Luca didn't step in immediately. He looked back toward the narrow street that led to her apartment. Somewhere behind those bricks, she was still asleep, and he already knew he would never escape her. Not from his mind, not from his heart, not ever. Ellen woke to the soft insistence of morning light pressing against her eyelids. The room smelled faintly of lavender and rain-warmed brick. For one suspended heartbeat, she felt the warmth of an arm that wasn't there, and the echo of a voice that had murmured her name as if it meant salvation. The pillow beside her was cool. She rolled toward it anyway, seeking proof that the night had been real, that skin and breath and the tender patience of that man's hands hadn't all been borrowed from a dream. That was when she saw the paper, someone else's handwriting, a strong, slanted script, decisive and elegant, a phone number, and beneath it, a single branded word, mine. Her stomach dipped. It should have felt thrilling, an old-fashioned claim, a dizzying storybook anchor. Instead, it pressed on her windpipe with the weight of a lock clicking shut. She touched the letters as if they might be hot. Mine. Not call me or last night was beautiful, or even I'll see you soon. A possession staked without her permission, like a flag planted in a country that had never asked for colonizers. Ellen folded the note, then unfolded it again, guessing the shape of the man who had written it from the steadiness of the pen strokes. Disciplined, dominant, unapologetic. Luca. The name rippled through her like a secret tide. Memory gave her the rest, the way he'd asked before every touch, the way obeying him had never felt like surrender, only rescue, the way he'd looked at her after, as if the world had fallen quiet. A shiver ran along her spine that wasn't fear, not exactly, but knew its cousin. She slid out of bed, pulled on one of her oversized cardigans, and padded barefoot into the kitchen. The kettle complained to life. Her hands shook when she reached for the mug. She had the strangest impulse to call him, to tell him that the night had made something bloom in her chest she'd thought long dead. Then the word on the page pulsed at the edge of her vision. Mine. She exhaled. No, she whispered to the empty apartment, and the word felt like a promise to the version of herself who'd finally learned to run. She folded the note sharply and slid it into the shallow drawer beside her spoons, where stray rubber bands and orphaned keys went to disappear. The kettle began to whistle. By the time she turned off the stove, the drawer was shut, and the apartment looked exactly like it had the morning before. as if a storm had rolled over it and left not a single leaf disturbed. Still, when she lifted the mug, her fingers found an invisible tremor. She pressed the ceramic to her lips, willing the warmth to settle the flutter. You met a man. You were brave. You chose. And now you choose again. She didn't call. Across the river the day opened like a knife. From the 40th floor glass of his penthouse, Luca Rocco watched Manhattan grind into motion. Bridges breathing cars, the river shouldering light, a helicopter carving a black hyphen between towers. The city looked like a silent engine, efficient and obedient. He was used to this view, used to the distance and the control it promised. Today the glass reflected a man he didn't recognize, shirt open at the throat, tie discarded, an unslept restlessness coiled behind his eyes. He'd intended to leave her a protection, a path back to him. The number had been instinct, the single word a miscalculation of the only language power had taught him. He could still feel the precise weight of the pen, the drag of ink on paper, the sudden irrational fear that if he wrote anything softer, anything human, he might be giving her the weapon to undo him. She did not call. By noon, he had torn through 2 meetings and 3 men's patience. A developer pitched a waterfront deal. Luca nodded at all the right moments, his answers clipped, the arithmetic of threat and profit running on muscle memory while a second pulse beat in his blood. The angle of Ellen's jaw tipped to a sunrise window, the vulnerability in her mouth when she'd asked him with a breath to keep going. The second in command, Silvio, watched him with the reluctant attention of someone who believed in the usefulness of storms, but preferred them scheduled. "Senator expects you at 7, Silvio reminded quietly as the elevator opened. "Committee fundraiser." Luca stepped in, jaw ticking. "Tell the senator I'm bringing his favorite scotch." Silvio nodded, pressed the button, and didn't say what both men knew. Luca Rocco never missed a fundraiser he'd paid for. He also never watched a phone that wasn't ringing. They drew out the afternoon like a wire. By evening, the penthouse was too quiet. He poured a drink he didn't want. The city moved beneath him. He set the glass down untouched, picked up his phone, put it face down again. This was ridiculous. He didn't wait. He summoned. He didn't ache. He anesthetized. He didn't miss. He missed. At some point, the stray cat he'd rescued 4 months earlier padded out from the laundry room, silky black with a white slash under his chin like a stolen tie. The cat leapt onto the back of the sofa, stared at Luca with irritable majesty, then headbutted his shoulder. Luca's hand moved of its own accord, scratching the space behind the ears. Nero purred like a small, pleased engine. "Don't look at me like that," Luca muttered. Nero blinked, unimpressed. The phone stayed silent. Ellen let the day's rhythm carry her. The shop, Bloom and Vine, smelled of damp soil and lemon cleaner when she unlocked at 9. She flipped the closed sign to open, set the till, and breathed the kind of breath she only ever found here, among leaves and quiet work. Outside, the neighborhood scraped awake. A delivery truck coughing, a kid whizzing by on a scooter, someone arguing about trash pickup in 2 languages. Brooklyn had a heartbeat that soothed her because it didn't pretend to be anything else. Her co-worker Jules, a college kid with chipped nail polish and a dramatic talent for overwatering everything, waltzed in late carrying a blueberry muffin the size of her face. "You look suspiciously serene for a Thursday. Did you sleep?" Ellen arranged a row of freesias. "More than expected." Jules inspected her. "You've got a vibe." She wiggled the muffin. "Spill." Ellen smiled into the flowers. "You're reading tea leaves." "I'm reading your glow," Jules retorted, then softened. "You deserve a good night." I had one, Ellen thought, and I kept it. It's mine. Before lunch, a woman ordered roses. For myself, because I finally left. And Ellen tied the ribbon like a blessing. After lunch, a man came in demanding lilies, then changed his mind 4 times while describing a girlfriend he clearly didn't deserve. Between customers, Ellen repotted a delicate fern, trimmed tulips, and let the ordinary acts fill her bones with steadiness. Around 3, when a shaft of sun fell across the counter and warmed her wrists, she felt it. The echo of his breath in the hollow just below her ear. The memory stumbled through her like a rush of heat. She steadied herself on the workbench, eyes closing for one unapologetic second. "I'm going out back," she told Jules. "Need to check the soil delivery." She stepped into the narrow rear alley where the day sounded filtered, like the city had been wrapped in gauze, and pressed a hand to the cool brick. She had told herself she wouldn't look for him, so she didn't turn toward the street. She didn't crane her neck down the block, didn't scan for a sleek black car with windows too dark to read. She breathed until the pull of him eased from a sharp ache to a tender bruise, then went back to the register and made exact change for a woman who smelled of rain and honey. At closing time, Ellen locked the door, counted the till, and texted the landlord about the stubborn radiator. When she finally made it home, the apartment felt oddly strange, like someone had set every object back down a half-inch from where it belonged. She stood in the doorway a long moment, then exhaled her nerves and stepped inside. Nothing had moved. Of course it hadn't. She was safe. She cooked pasta. She let the sauce simmer as if patience were a recipe. She washed dishes and watched steam fog the window. She did not open the drawer. In bed, the ceiling traced its familiar hairline cracks. She tried to read, then turned off the lamp and listened to her heart counting the spaces between the city's distant sirens. When sleep finally found her, it was stubborn and complicated, a white flag raised after too many skirmishes to call it victory. She dreamed of a ballroom and a stranger who had looked at her like a lullaby. The first day, he told himself she was busy. The second day, he told himself pride was noble in small doses. By the third, nobility felt like a word other people used to make indecision sound like principle. On the fourth day, he went entirely still inside, a stillness his men recognized as the calm that came before he decided which kingdom to seize and which to bury under salt. On the morning of the fifth day, he spoke without looking up from the skyline. "Silvio." His lieutenant appeared as if conjured. "Boss." "Her name is Ellen Thompson," he said, the S's clean as glass. "Find her." Silvio had been expecting the order, only not the softness under it. "You want everything?" "Everything you can learn without frightening her." Luca's jaw flexed. "If she is frightened, I will be displeased." Silvio had seen men lose wars by underestimating the gravity of that sentence. "Understood." Luca's gaze didn't leave the river. The word mine slid through his mind, dragged there by its own weight. He wanted to burn it and keep it. He wanted to show up on her doorstep with apologies and fruit and a ridiculous cat that liked expensive sardines. He wanted to carry her past every locked door she'd ever learned to avoid, and set her down in a place where nothing and no one could ever claim her again, even him. He wanted, and the wanting felt like a knife turned handle first in his palm. Dangerous, but potentially an instrument of rescue. Silvio returned faster than most people found their car keys. She runs a place called Bloom and Vine in Brooklyn, lives alone, no known boyfriend. 30-minute commute on the G unless the G is acting like the G. Nero, draped across a chair like spilled ink, yawned. Luca drew one calm breath that carried the clean edge of hunger. "Schedule the senator," he said. "Then cancel him." "Under what pretense?" "The truth. I'm busy." "Busy," Silvio repeated dryly. "With flowers." Luca glanced over, and even Silvio managed to find something else to look at. He could have sent flowers. The irony of that almost made him smile. He could have sent money or men or a message written by someone whose job was to choose words less likely to ignite the ground they landed on. Instead, he put on a dark coat, took the elevator, and walked 2 blocks without his driver. The late sun cut the avenue into gold bars as he turned down a quieter street where a small bell chimed every time someone opened a door and children crossed like migratory birds tugging parents on invisible strings. Across from a bodega and a laundromat still fogged with detergent breath, Bloom and Vine sat in the middle of the block, a hopeful green door, a hand-painted sign, and a window display that made the day look gentler than it had any right to be. The sight punched him with its ordinary holiness. He stood at the curb for a moment, considering the mercy of walking away. He didn't. The bell above the door announced the intrusion as if embarrassed by its own cheerfulness. He stepped inside. It had been a soft day, orders steady, no crises, Enough time between customers for Ellen to teach Jules the difference between pruning and murder. The shop was clean. The cooler thrummed quietly. She stood on a small step stool and stretched to mist a trailing fern she'd coaxed back from the brink with patience and music. The bell rang. "Welcome to—" she began, turning, and her voice stripped itself bare at the sight of him. He was taller in daylight. Or maybe it was that daylight revealed the way he occupied space, a coiled quiet that made noise look like a nervous habit. He didn't wear a suit today. The dark coat accented his shoulders, and the open collar showed the anchored V of a man built on discipline rather than vanity. His eyes, God, those eyes, found hers as if they'd been looking through the city for 5 days and had finally located the only coordinates that mattered. Her fingers loosened. The spray bottle rattled against tile. For a heartbeat, neither moved. She wanted to reach for the drawer miles away in another kitchen and wave the note like a flag. Do you see what that did to me? Do you see how it branded me with something too close to a chain? She wanted to tell him she had liked the way his mouth had respected her answers, the way his hands had asked and asked again until her yes carried both surrender and victory. She wanted to demand how a man could be that gentle and know how to write a word that tasted like ownership. "Ellen," he said, and it landed somewhere below her ribs. Her name in his mouth made a simple sound complicated. "Please leave," she managed, though her voice betrayed her with its tremor. This is my place." He nodded once, as if the room itself had rights he intended to honor. "I know." Jules behind the counter stared between them with unabashed curiosity, until Luca's glance sent her scuttling to the back with the speed of a cat hearing the bathtub run. The cooler thrummed. Somewhere near the base of the hydrangeas, a bee considered a life of poor decisions and buzzed against the glass. Luca didn't come closer. He didn't reach. He kept both hands visible, palms relaxed, an offering of restraint. "The night we shared," he said quietly, "was not a transaction to me." Ellen's chin lifted a fraction. "Then your note chose the worst possible word." "I know." The admission surprised them both. "I have spent a lifetime naming things the way power required. It's a habit I despise more this week than I have in years." Ellen's heartbeat stuttered. The apology was not a soft thing. It was forged, heavy with meaning. Still, she shook her head. "You can't walk into my life and plant a flag. I won't live like property. Not ever again." The last 3 words slipped out before she could stop them, old iron scenting the air. His eyes sharpened, but he didn't pursue the echo. "I won't pretend I'm a good man," he said, "but I know what a good thing is when it touches my hands. I didn't leave because you were less than I wanted. I left because I was more afraid than I've been in 20 years. The confession left the space between them ringing. How absurd that terror could be the truest form of reverence. For one reckless second she saw it, herself stepping down from the stool, crossing the small distance, resting her palm against the steady thunder of his chest. She saw the way relief would loosen his shoulders. She saw how easily she could drown in the relief of it herself. "Luca," she said very softly, "I have my reasons for needing distance. I will learn them," he answered, not as a threat but as a vow. "And I will not take from you what you do not offer." He inclined his head once as if to the queen of some fragile border. "But I won't vanish." Her breath snagged. "That's not how this works." A muscle leaped in his jaw. "I know exactly how this works. I show up, every day. I buy flowers I don't need. I leave them in places where strangers can mistake them for miracles. I learn the taste of your coffee. I ask you questions and answer the ones you ask back. I wait." He stepped backward then, the smallest retreat a general ever made, and reached behind to push the door open with 2 fingers. The bell chimed a bright, foolish note. Cold air curled around his coat. "Tomorrow," he said, "and the day after, unless you tell me never." Her mouth opened. Say it, say never, lock the gate, save your heart, and nothing came. Not a word, not a sound. His gaze flicked from her eyes to the spray bottle at her feet, to the sunflower she'd tucked into a mason jar near the register like a yellow laugh. He left. The door closed. The bell stilled. Her knees softened as if the bones inside had considered better uses of their time and gone on strike. Jules peeked out from the back room, whispering as if the flowers might listen. "Who was that?" Ellen stared at the green door as though it had just moved them all a half-inch closer to something no one could name. "Someone who buys a lot of flowers," she said, and wondered whether the future had already pressed its signature into her life where she couldn't yet see it. Outside, a black car idled half a block down, not close enough to frighten, close enough to count. Sylvia watched his boss walk past without opening the door for him. Luca said nothing, but the air around him had sharpened into the exact weather men in his world learned to heed. Not a tantrum, not a tempest. Purpose. Tomorrow, the bell would ring again. Ellen locked up that night with hands that would not stop shaking. At home, she opened the spoon drawer without meaning to, unfolded the note, and watched the single word stare back at her, stubborn and changed. She lifted a pen and wrote smaller beneath it, as if her handwriting might tuck a bodyguard into a dangerous sentence. "I am not." She set the folded paper on the counter, stared at it a long time, then, almost laughing at herself, slid it into her pocket as if carrying it made the argument more official. The radiator hissed. Outside, the city rehearsed its lullabies. She turned out the light. Sleep did not come easily. When it finally did, it wore his voice. The next morning, the bell above Bloom and Vine chimed before Ellen had even turned the open sign. She froze, one hand still on the latch. The air inside the shop smelled of damp leaves and eucalyptus oil. Through the soft veil of the morning light, a tall shadow lingered just beyond the glass. She didn't need to look twice. He had come back. Luca Rocco, in a dark coat and quiet expression, held a small white box in his hands. His eyes searched hers, unreadable and steady, like a storm waiting for permission to rain. Ellen opened the door halfway. "We open at 9. "It's 9:01, he said simply, holding out the box. She hesitated. "What is this?" "Breakfast," he said, and an apology. Inside was a perfect croissant and a folded napkin. On the napkin, written in the same commanding hand that had once scrawled mine, were softer words this time. "I don't want to own you. I just can't forget you." Her chest tightened. She wanted to slam the door. She wanted to thank him. She wanted to forget that his voice could make her heartbeat forget its rhythm. "I don't need gifts," she said finally. "Then it's not a gift," he replied. "It's an excuse to see you." Her throat went dry. He stepped back, hands raised, letting the cold air between them become a fragile peace. "I'll come back tomorrow," he added. "For coffee, not war." He left. The next day, he returned. And the day after that. And the day after that. Always with something small, not expensive, never ostentatious. A coffee just how she liked it. A rare succulent she'd once mentioned in passing. A jar of imported honey because she said sugar made her tea too sharp. Every morning, the same routine. The bell chimed. She froze. He entered quietly. They spoke a few words that never said what either really meant. Jules noticed first. "That guy's obsessed," she whispered one afternoon as Luca walked out, leaving behind another untouched bouquet. "Should I be worried?" Ellen's fingers lingered on the petals. "No," she said softly. "I think he's the one who's worried." Because the truth was, his persistence didn't feel like threat. It felt like repentance. Each gesture carried something disarmed in it, as though he were trying to relearn gentleness with her as his only teacher. Still, the unease wouldn't leave her. His world, whatever dark kingdom he ruled, lived by rules that didn't belong in hers. And yet, every time she caught the edge of his cologne on the air, her body betrayed her. Her chest fluttered with warmth that no logic could quiet. One gray afternoon, a storm dragged across the city. The sky bruised violet, thunder rolling low like a warning. Luca entered drenched, raindrops slicking his hair back, water tracing the edge of his jaw. Ellen was alone. Jules had left early for class. "You're going to ruin my floor," she said, trying to sound annoyed. "I'll buy you a new one," he answered, voice rough with rain. She crossed her arms. You can't keep coming here, Luca. This isn't a game. I know it isn't. He took a small step closer, water pooling at his shoes. Then why do you keep letting me in? Her breath faltered. The question landed somewhere deeper than she wanted to admit. Because you're impossible to stop, she whispered. He smiled faintly, but it wasn't arrogant. It was tired, almost vulnerable. Why sunflowers? He asked suddenly, glancing toward the bright cluster by the window. She blinked. What? You always keep them here, even when it's not their season. Her gaze softened. Because they always face the light, no matter how dark it gets. For a long moment, neither spoke. Rain thundered against the glass, muffling the world outside. And then, quietly, almost like a confession, he said, I don't remember the last time I saw the light. Her pulse stuttered. You will, she said. You just have to stop chasing shadows. He took another step, slow and deliberate, the scent of rain and cologne filling the air between them. Maybe I already did. She should have stepped back. She didn't. He reached out, brushing a wet strand of hair from her cheek with the gentleness of a man afraid to touch a miracle. Her skin burned where his fingers passed. Ellen, he murmured, I'm not asking you to forgive me. Just to see me. Her voice trembled. And if I do? His eyes darkened. Then I won't survive it. She exhaled, shaky and slow. You make everything sound dangerous. He smiled faintly. That's because everything that matters is. From that day on, he became a ghost orbiting her world. A black car idled quietly across the street every evening until she locked the shop and went home. Anonymous lunches began to arrive. Perfect salads, small sandwiches, sometimes handwritten notes folded inside the napkin. You skipped lunch yesterday. Eat. L. She tried to return them. The delivery drivers only smiled. Paid in advance, they said. One evening she saw a man following her. A stranger, tall, unshaven, eyes too sharp. Fear clawed at her throat. But before she could cross the street, the man looked over her shoulder and vanished into the alley like smoke. Later that night, Luca's number flashed on her phone for the first time. She didn't answer. A minute later, a message appeared. You don't have to speak to me. Just know you're safe, always. She pressed the phone to her chest, torn between fury and relief. He was everywhere and nowhere, an invisible fortress around her. She should have hated it. But in a world that had always hurt her before it cared for her, his protection felt dangerously close to love. Weeks blurred like watercolor. The shop filled with new blooms, and so did her heart, though she tried not to admit it. One evening, as she locked up, Luca was waiting outside. No guards, no car, just him. Walk with me, he said softly. Not a command, a plea. They walked through quiet streets glistening with streetlight reflections. He told her about his mother, a seamstress from Naples who'd raised him alone, about the stray cat, Nero, who slept on his couch like a king. He told her about nights he sat in silence, listening to the hum of a city that feared him. And she told him about her shop, her love of growing things, her dream of a greenhouse cafe one day. When she spoke, he listened, truly listened, the way men rarely did. Every word seemed to matter to him. At the corner of her block, he stopped. You make me forget who I am, he said quietly. Maybe that's the point, she answered. His hand lifted, hesitated, then found hers. Warm, solid, human. And when she didn't pull away, his heart, the same heart that had once built an empire of power, forgot to defend itself. From that night on, Luca stopped sending gifts. He came in person instead. No guards, no games. Just presence. He helped her carry bags of soil, watered the plants, even learned to repot orchids under her amused supervision. When their fingers brushed, something electric and unspoken passed between them. It wasn't the fire of their first night. It was quieter, deeper. The kind of intimacy that feels like a secret prayer, and though neither dared to speak the word, both knew it. They were falling, not in lust, in love. But love built on secrets is a house made of glass. And somewhere in Luca's world, cracks were already beginning to form. One late afternoon, Ellen stood by the window, watching the last customers leave. The shop glowed golden in the fading light. Luca was crouched by the orchids, sleeves rolled up, strong hands delicate as he steadied a new bloom. He looked up, smiling faintly. "Perfect," he murmured. "For a man who used to break things for a living," she teased, "you're surprisingly gentle." He chuckled. "Maybe I was just waiting to learn what deserved gentleness." She blushed, turning back to the counter. But her chest ached with something too big for her ribs. Outside, a car door slammed. Two men in dark coats lingered across the street, pretending to smoke. Luca's gaze flicked toward them, his entire body tightening like a bow drawn too far. "Who are they?" she asked quietly. "No one that matters," he lied. "Lock the door." Her heart stumbled. The shadows in his eyes were back, the ones that never quite stayed gone. He brushed her cheek softly. "Don't worry, I'll handle it." But that was the moment Ellen realized something she'd been trying to deny. The man she loved didn't belong to the light. He was trying to reach it, but his world still had claws. And whatever he was hiding was about to reach for her too. The rain came without warning that night. A soft silver sheet over the city, blurring the lines between lights and dreams. Ellen stood inside Bloom and Vine, the last candle flickering in the window, while Luca locked the front door behind them. They had stayed late again, rearranging new arrivals and laughing over the smallest things, the kind of laughter that belongs only to people pretending they aren't falling in love. He turned the key slowly, the sound clicking through the quiet like a promise. "Now you're trapped with me," he said, voice low and teasing. Ellen smiled faintly. "I think that's supposed to scare me." "Does it?" She shook her head, her eyes glinting like the candlelight on water. "Not anymore." Something inside him loosened. For months he had lived in the shadow of her rejection, coming back each day not to conquer her, but to earn a kind of grace he didn't think he deserved. And now, in that small, flower-scented shop, she was finally looking at him without fear. He took a step closer, then another. She didn't move away. "Ellen," he whispered, "tell me to stop." "I don't want to." When his lips found hers, the world disappeared. No noise, no thunder, only the sound of two hearts trying to find the same rhythm. Her hands moved to his chest, feeling the solid beat beneath the fabric. He kissed her slowly, like he had all the time in the world to make up for the time he'd wasted. The warmth between them deepened. He lifted her gently, setting her on the counter between rows of roses and tulips, his hands firm but reverent. "Look at me," he murmured, voice rough. "If this is too much, it isn't," she whispered, her breath trembling against his jaw. "I want this. I want you." The admission tore something open inside him. For years, he had been feared by everyone, and now, this small, brave woman looked at him not with fear, but with trust. It undid him completely. He kissed her again, and this time it wasn't careful. It was desperate, hungry, the collision of two worlds that should never have touched. But beneath the heat, there was tenderness. Every sigh, every shiver between them was filled with something that felt dangerously close to love. When he finally pulled back, her eyes were glassy, her lips parted. He brushed his thumb over her lower lip, tracing the pulse that beat wildly beneath it. "I don't deserve you," he said quietly, "but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to." Ellen swallowed hard, searching his face. "Then don't run from me again." He smiled faintly, resting his forehead against hers. "I won't." But even as he said it, a shadow flickered behind his eyes, the kind that comes from secrets too large to bury. In the weeks that followed, Luca and Ellen lived inside a fragile miracle. He came to the shop every morning. Sometimes he brought coffee, sometimes nothing but a look that made her forget the rest of the world existed. They shared dinners in quiet restaurants where he was only Luca, not the man whispered about in New York's darker corners. He would walk her home, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back, the air between them humming with unspoken words. It felt almost normal, almost safe. But safety, in Luca Rocco's world, was always an illusion. The more she let herself fall for him, the more Ellen began to notice the cracks, the unmarked cars that seemed to linger near the shop, the way his phone buzzed with coded messages he would step outside to answer, the rare flash of violence in his voice when someone crossed him. He tried to hide it, to shield her from it, but the truth had a way of seeping through even the smallest seams. And still, she loved him. That was the part that scared her most. One night she came home to find a package at her door. No name, no return address. Inside, wrapped in black tissue paper, was a single bullet. No note. Just the metal glint of warning. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. She didn't need a message to understand what it meant. This was Luca's world reaching for her. She sat on the couch, staring at the small, cold object in her palm when her phone rang. His name lit up the screen. She hesitated, then answered. "Ellen?" His voice was sharp. "Did you get something delivered tonight?" "How did you—" "Just answer me." "Yes." A pause, then a sigh heavy enough to fill the room. "Don't touch it. I'm on my way." "Luca, no." But the line went dead. 20 minutes later, a black car pulled up outside her building. He appeared in the doorway, dark and furious, rain still clinging to his coat. When he saw the bullet on her table, his jaw tightened. "Who sent it?" she demanded. "I'll find out." "Don't you dare lie to me," she said, stepping forward. "This is because of you, isn't it?" He looked at her, silent for a long, painful moment. Then finally, "Yes." The word hit harder than she expected. He didn't defend himself. He didn't make excuses. He just looked at her like a man standing in the ruins of something he never meant to destroy. "What are you, Luca?" she whispered. "Who are you, really?" His shoulders straightened. The air in the room shifted. "I own things I shouldn't," he said quietly. "I've built a world most people never see, one where loyalty is currency and violence is language." Ellen felt her heart drop. "You're—" "Yes." His voice didn't waver. "The man you shouldn't have met. The man who doesn't get to love women like you." She stepped back, shaking her head. "You lied to me. I protected you. By lying? By keeping you alive." Her eyes filled with tears. "You think that makes it better?" "No," he said, "but it makes it true." The silence between them was thick with things they could never unhear. She turned away, her hand pressed to her mouth to keep the sob from escaping. He moved closer, stopping just short of touching her. "Ellen," he said softly, "I never wanted this life for you. But if walking away keeps you safe, I'll do it." She turned then, her voice breaking. "And if I don't want you to?" For the first time, he looked afraid. He took her face in his hands, eyes burning. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life trying to keep you from getting hurt because of me." The storm outside raged harder, lightning flashing through the window. She stared at him, her heart splitting between reason and need. "I don't know if I can live in your world," she whispered. "Then I'll change it," he said fiercely. "For you." Her tears spilled over. "Don't make promises you can't keep." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I don't break promises, Ellen. Not to you." For a long moment they stood like that. Two worlds trying to fit inside one heartbeat. She felt his warmth, his desperation, his sincerity, and she knew that walking away would destroy her as much as staying might. When she finally spoke, her voice was a whisper against his skin. "Then prove it." He did. Over the next weeks, the city's whispers began to change. The Rocco name, once synonymous with fear, started to shift. Businesses Luca had built on silence and threat began to run clean. People noticed the difference, but no one dared to ask why. He didn't tell them that the reason sat every morning behind a counter of tulips, laughing softly, while she tied ribbons around hope. He didn't tell them that, for the first time, the most dangerous man in New York wasn't thinking about control. He was thinking about forgiveness. But secrets like his don't die quietly. And some men, in his world, never forgive change. It happened on a Sunday morning. Ellen was opening the shop alone when the bell above the door rang. She looked up, expecting Luca, but it wasn't him. Two men in dark coats stepped inside. One smiled, the other locked the door. Nice place you've got, the taller one said. You must be the reason Luca's been distracted. Ellen froze. Who are you? Friends, he said. Or we were. Before she could answer, one of them grabbed her arm, twisting it behind her back. The vase she was arranging crashed to the floor, shattering like the silence. Tell your boyfriend, the man whispered, breath hot against her ear, that he doesn't get to walk away from the family business. Then, just as suddenly, the bell rang again. And Luca was there. He didn't speak. He didn't shout. He moved like lightning. By the time the police sirens began to wail in the distance, one man lay unconscious, the other running. Luca stood in the middle of the chaos, chest heaving, his shirt streaked with someone else's blood. Ellen's hands trembled as she touched his face. What have you done? What I had to, he said quietly. She shook her head, tears spilling. They were right. You'll never escape this. He caught her wrist gently, desperate. I will. For you. Her voice broke. Then tell me the truth. Tell me everything. He hesitated, his eyes pleading. You don't want that? Yes, she said, voice trembling but sure. I do. He looked at her for a long time, then nodded once as if surrendering to the inevitable. Then meet me tonight, he said, at my place. No more secrets. And just like that, he walked out, the bell above the door chiming like a warning. Ellen sank to her knees among the broken glass and fallen petals. Her heartbeat thundered in her chest, and she whispered to no one, I'm already in love with him. She didn't know that the truth waiting for her that night would rewrite everything. Who he was, who she was, and why their love had been doomed from the start. His penthouse was a cathedral of glass and shadow. The city lay beneath it like a lit map of choices. And Luca Rocco stood beside the window, as if he were studying the routes he'd never taken. When Ellen arrived, the elevator doors opened with the soft oath of luxury. Her reflection ghosted across polished marble, the hem of her coat still wet from rain. She stepped inside as if crossing a border. He had changed into a black shirt, sleeves rolled to the forearms, throat unbuttoned. He looked like danger trying to learn mercy. Ellen, he said, and the word held both invitation and apology. Tonight, she answered, voice steady, we tell the truth. Nero, the black cat with a priest's authority, leapt silently onto the back of the sofa and regarded Ellen with ceremonial interest. She reached out. Nero leaned into her hand as if he recognized tenderness on sight. The gesture loosened something in Luca's chest. Wine? He asked. Water, she said. Clear things, honest ones. He poured. She didn't sit. Neither did he. The city hummed between them. Start with you, she said. Start with what you were born into. He told her, carefully at first, then the way a dam talks when it finally breaks. The seamstress mother from Naples who taught him to thread a needle and a lie with equal steadiness. The debts he'd paid that were never his. The first time a man put a gun in his hand, and the first time he put it down and learned that fear can be built out of silence just as easily. He did not glorify. He did not beg absolution. He spoke like a man putting names to ghosts. I wanted power because I thought it would keep me from wanting anything else, he said. Then I met you, and I've been starving ever since. She set the glass on the table, the crystal ringing like a small bell. You were honest, she said softly. So I will be more than honest. I'll be cruel with the truth. He went very still. My name is Ellen Thompson, she said, and then closed her eyes. But that is the name I chose. The room narrowed to the shape of her mouth, forming the next words. My father is Vittorio Moretti. A silence like a blade. Luca didn't move. Somewhere below, a siren threaded a single red line through the night. Nero's tail flicked once, twice, and stopped. Say it again, Luca said, the words almost gentle. My father is Vittorio Moretti, Ellen repeated, each syllable a weight. I left. I ran. I built a life out of other people's names. I didn't want to be anyone's bargaining chip. He crossed the room in a stride and then stopped as if the floor were marked with a border only he could see. She stood straight-backed, a sunflower refusing to bow to wind. It was always going to be him, Luca said quietly, like a man speaking to a returning nightmare. Of all the names in this city, it had to be his. I didn't choose the man who raised me, she whispered. But I chose to leave him. I choose who I am every day, and I chose you before I knew what it meant. His laugh was a single broken note. You chose the enemy. I chose the man who brings breakfast because I skip meals, who kneels to repot orchids with hands that once held fear. That isn't an enemy. That's a miracle I didn't believe I could have. The words hit him with the odd, clean pain of grace, yet under it ran the old river of blood. You were a virgin, he said, the memory catching like thread on a nail. Because he kept you untouched for trade. She flinched as if old metal had flashed in the room. He thinks purity is currency. He thinks daughters are contracts with pulses. Rage moved through Luca in a dark, controlled wave. He will never touch you again. He hasn't for years, she said, and her smile held both victory and grief. He lost me the day I understood what he was, but he still believes he owns my story, and now I've given that story to you. Something inside Luca tore and rearranged. He wanted to promise her a clean world. He knew better. What he could promise, what he suddenly understood he would die to guarantee, was a border around hers that would not break. Come away with me, he said hoarsely. Tonight. Leave everything you can leave. I'll build the rest again. She shook her head, eyes bright. I won't run anymore, not from him, not from you. She stepped closer until the heat of him remade the air. I will, however, ask you something impossible. He almost smiled. Good. I'm good at impossible. Lay down the parts of your life that will be used to hurt us, she said. Not because I demand a saint, but because I want a husband who doesn't disappear into shadows I can't follow. The word husband struck him like a bell rung in the ribs. He reached for her, stopped, and then, slowly, as if giving gravity time to adjust, lifted her hand to his mouth. He kissed the inside of her wrist, a vow old as altars. I'll dismantle what I have to, he said. I'll leave what I can't corrupt. I'll keep what protects the people I love. The people? She asked, voice small. You, he said simply. It starts with you. Tears lifted to her lashes but did not fall. She nodded once. Then it starts. They stood like that, inches apart, two oaths learning the shape of each other. When he finally drew her to him, it wasn't desperate. It was certain. He held her as if memorizing a map, palms at her spine, breath in her hair, body a shelter and not a cage. She pressed her cheek to his chest and felt the clean, mortal proof of him. Tell me the worst, she whispered into the fabric. Tell me the thing you're most afraid I'll know. He closed his eyes. That if he comes for you, I won't always choose the legal road to keep you safe. A beat. Then, the worst, she said, voice steady, is that you might hesitate. He startled, then grinned the wrecked grin of a man forgiven and conscripted in the same second. I won't. She pulled back enough to see him. Then there's something you need to hear from me that is as dangerous as a loaded gun. I'm listening. I love you, she said. The room brightened. He didn't move for a second, as if the body sometimes needs to translate the soul. Then he cupped her face, thumbs at the corners of her mouth, reverent as prayer. Say it again. I love you, Luca. It was all the permission he'd ever needed. He kissed her. Slow, deep, a new language they both already knew. The night outside fell into a hush that felt like blessing. When they broke apart, he took a breath that sounded like a man surfacing. Marry me. She laughed, wet, startled, happy. You carry the word always like other men carry weapons. He reached into his pocket and produced a small velvet box, as if her challenge had conjured it. He flipped it open. The diamond did not flash so much as breathe, set in woven platinum like a story that had decided to be permanent. I was going to ask you somewhere with white tablecloths, he said, and a skyline that tries too hard, But the truth belongs here. In the lion's den, she teased. In the place where the lion learned he wanted to be a husband. His voice softened. Ellen. A sound cut him off. Not the elevator, the security panel. A soft green wink turned yellow, then red. His head snapped toward the wall. Stay behind me, he said, the command automatic and absolute. Luca, now. Three things happened at once. Nero vanished under the sofa. The elevator hummed alive, though no button had been pressed. And Luca's hand found a drawer that Ellen hadn't noticed, the steel inside catching light like an ugly truth. He didn't raise it. He only held it like a promise to time. The elevator doors parted. Silence. Empty space. Then a single paper envelope slid across the polished floor as if pushed by an invisible hand. The doors closed again. The hum died. The red light on the panel went calmly green. Luca stared at the envelope. A bad taste rose in his mouth. He approached it the way he'd approach a snake. He towed it open with his shoe. A photograph waited inside, glossy and intimate. Ellen locking bloom and vine, chin lifted against a cold wind. Scrawled across the bottom in block letters was a sentence that shoved the temperature of the room below freezing. Return what is ours. No signature. No need. Ellen's pulse thudded loud enough to hear. He knows. He's guessing, Luca said, even as he knew it was a lie. He reached for her, the weapon already forgotten on the table. Listen to me. This is what happens next. We don't run. We don't hide. We bring light to the places he keeps dark. We make it expensive to even think your name. He'll go after the shop, she whispered. He'll go after anything that looks like hope, Luca said. So we guard hope first. He pulled out his phone with one hand, his other still anchoring her. Silvio, lock every door 3 blocks around Bloom and Vine. Plainclothes on every corner, no noise, no heat. Cameras, street, rooftops. If a shadow twitches, I want its middle name. A pause. Who? Silvio asked. Vittorio, Luca said, tasting iron. Another pause. Then sober. It's begun. It began the night I met her. Luca answered, and ended the call. Ellen took his face in both hands, forcing him to look at her. Not the war. You asked me to marry you in a room full of windows. Don't make me spend our first night smashing them shut. He searched her eyes and found the same stubborn sun she'd taught him to follow. He lowered his forehead to hers. Tomorrow, he said, we'll get the license. We'll tell the priest. We'll ask the cat to be our witness. Nero meowed like a benediction. And tonight? She asked. Tonight, he said, voice low. You sleep here. In my arms? In our house? The last phrase came out before he could blunt it. He didn't try. She brushed a tear from his jaw with her thumb. I'm not afraid of him anymore. I am, Luca said, honest to the bone. I'm afraid of what I'll become if he touches you. She kissed the confession off his mouth. Then be the man who builds a life we don't have to apologize for. Let the devil knock. We'll answer with vows. He smiled, broken and whole. Yes, amore. They turned together toward the bedroom. 2 silhouettes against a wall of city stars, her hand threaded with his, the ring still waiting in a small open box like a paused heartbeat. The elevator, 12 floors below, opened again onto the lobby. A man with winter in his hair and a smile like a guillotine stepped out, flanked by 2 shadows. The doorman glanced up, then down, then decided to remember nothing useful later. Vittorio Moretti removed leather gloves 1 finger at a time, satisfaction curling around each knuckle. Send the flowers back to the shop, he told the man on his right in a voice that had ruined many summers. White ones. For morning. For who? The shadow asked. Vittorio considered the ceiling as if speaking to God through concrete. For a girl who forgot whose name she carries, and for the boy who thinks he can steal my property and call it love. He smiled, gentle as a grandfather. Tomorrow we teach them both their history. Upstairs, Ellen curled into Luca's chest, listening to the cadence of a heart that had finally admitted it belonged to someone. He tucked her under his chin and whispered old country promises into her hair until sleep began to collect the edges of her fear. In the dark, The photograph on the table breathed its ugly sentence into the room. Return what is ours. The ring waited. The night did too. And the dawn, a shard of bright metal, was already on its way. The city woke gray and trembling, like it already knew war was coming. By dawn, the first call had gone out. Unmarked cars repositioned, men in black coats vanished into corners, and every shadow around Bloom and Vine began to move with purpose. Luca Rocco stood at the window of his penthouse, one arm wrapped around Ellen, the other resting against the glass. He hadn't slept. Neither had she. Below them, the streets looked deceptively peaceful. Coffee shops opening, buses sighing at corners. But they both felt it, the quiet before something irreparable. He turned toward her. "We leave in an hour," he said softly. "We'll get the license. Then we go straight to the church. Just you, me, and one priest willing to forget his calendar." Ellen's eyes, soft and steady, found his. "You really think vows can erase a war?" "No," he said, "but they can give it a reason to end." They arrived at City Hall under a cold drizzle that glossed the pavement like glass. Luca held her hand tightly, guiding her through metal detectors and curious stares. She was wearing the simplest dress, ivory, cotton with a soft cardigan, and yet he couldn't stop looking at her. When the clerk handed them the marriage license, Ellen smiled in disbelief. "That's it?" "That's it," Luca said. "A signature, and I'll spend my life proving it means more than paper." They left through the side door to avoid attention. But attention had already found them. A black car idled across the street, window rolled halfway down. A gloved hand rested on the frame. The same watch he'd seen in his nightmares glinted once before disappearing. Luca pulled her close. "Get in the car," he whispered. "Now." They didn't make it to the church. Halfway through Midtown, another car slammed into theirs from the side. Tires screamed. Glass shattered. Ellen's cry cut through the sound like a bell in a storm. Luca reacted before fear could. He shielded her, twisted the wheel, forced their car into an alley, and stopped only when smoke coiled from the hood. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. She shook her head, trembling. Luca, who was... He already knew. "My past," he said, and it just ran a red light. The air smelled of burning metal. Somewhere behind them, men shouted. Luca grabbed her hand. "Move." They ran through the maze of alleys until the sounds blurred into the heartbeat between them. She was gasping when they ducked into an abandoned chapel behind a shuttered bakery. The kind of forgotten church that seemed to exist only for fugitives and prayers that didn't fit anywhere else. Dust hung in the air like old forgiveness. A cracked crucifix leaned against the wall. And there, in the center aisle, beneath the faded glow of stained glass, Luca stopped. He turned to her. "Ellen," he said, "if we die today, I won't have it said that I never made you my wife." Her breath caught. "Here?" "Here," he said, "where no one can witness it but God, and maybe the dust." He removed the ring from his pocket. The same diamond, the same velvet box, smudged now with blood and smoke. Ellen's hands trembled as he took them. The air between them trembled too, the silence so complete it felt sacred. "Repeat after me," he said, voice low. "I, Luca Rocco, take you, Ellen Thompson." She interrupted, whispering through tears. "Ellen Moretti." He smiled faintly, eyes glistening. "Then I take both of you," he continued, "to be mine, not as property, but as peace, to fight for you, to build for you, to never let the world define what we are." Her tears fell freely now. "And I take you," she whispered, "to remind you that you were never born a monster. You just needed someone to see the man beneath the legend." He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if time itself had been conspiring for this one moment. They kissed, and the kiss was not passion. It was promise. Every heartbeat in both their chests swore something wordless and eternal. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "So what now, husband?" He smiled softly. "Now we go home." Home was supposed to mean the penthouse, the view, the illusion of safety. But when they arrived, the elevator doors opened to silence that was wrong. The guards were gone. The door was ajar. Luca's hand shot up. "Stay behind me." He entered first. The living room was immaculate, too immaculate. On the table, the envelope from the night before was gone. In its place was a single white rose and a card. Ellen picked it up with shaking fingers. "To my dearest daughter, congratulations on your marriage. I look forward to the honeymoon." No signature, just a wax seal. VM. Luca's jaw locked. "He wants me to come to him." "Then don't," Ellen said quickly. He turned toward her. "If I don't, he'll come for you. And if you do, then he'll have to face what he created." She grabbed his arm. "Luca, please. He's your enemy." "No," he said quietly. "He's your father. But that ends today." The confrontation took place in a warehouse by the docks. Neutral ground turned graveyard over the years. Luca walked in alone. Ellen followed despite his orders, hidden in the shadows of the upper balcony. Vittorio Moretti waited inside, immaculate as ever, silver hair slicked back, a ring gleaming on his left hand that matched the one Ellen had hidden in a drawer years ago. "My little runaway," Vittorio said when Luca appeared. "You found her. I should congratulate you. Though it's strange, men usually ask a father for permission, not forgiveness." "I'm not here to ask for either," Luca replied. "I'm here to end it." Vittorio laughed softly. "End it? You can't end blood, boy. You can only spill more of it." "She's not your blood anymore," Luca said. "She's my wife." That word, wife, landed like gunfire. Vittorio's smile thinned. "Then you'll bury her with your name, too." He lifted his hand, and his men stepped forward. But Luca had planned for this. Shadows moved in from every corner. His men, Silvio among them, guns drawn but silent. Vittorio's smirk faltered. "You'd turn the city into a battlefield for a woman? I'd turn the world into peace for her," Luca said. Then everything exploded at once. Shouts, gunfire, chaos. Ellen screamed from the balcony as bullets shattered glass. Luca dove for cover, taking down one of Vittorio's men with precision. Silvio returned fire, dragging Luca toward the exit. But Luca broke free, eyes locked on Vittorio. The old man tried to run. He didn't get far. Luca caught him near the door, gun pressed to his chest. "This is for every woman you caged," Luca said, voice shaking. "For every life you thought you owned." Vittorio's eyes flickered. Defiance, then something like recognition. "You sound just like me," he said. "That's the tragedy." Luca hesitated. His finger hovered over the trigger. "Don't." Ellen's voice rang out behind him, clear as glass. He turned. She stood on the stairs, tears cutting through the dust on her face. "If you kill him, you become him, and I lose you." The gun lowered. The silence that followed was louder than any gunshot. Luca turned to the old man. "You don't deserve to die today," he said quietly. "You deserve to watch what love builds without you." He tossed the gun away and took Ellen's hand. Together they walked out, leaving Vittorio standing in the ruin of his own legacy. By the time the sun rose, the city was strangely quiet again. Luca and Ellen stood on the roof of Bloom and Vine, watching the first light spill across the skyline. Below them, the shop sign swayed gently in the wind. Ellen leaned into him, her head against his chest. "Do you think it's really over?" "No," he said, "but it's changed." He looked down at her hand, the ring catching the sunrise, and smiled faintly. "We built something no one can buy, threaten, or steal. That's how it ends. Not with revenge, with us still standing." She turned to him, eyes shining. "Then let's keep standing." He kissed her, softly this time, the way you kiss someone you plan to keep. When they broke apart, he whispered, "You'll always be my beginning, Ellen. Not my sin. My salvation." She smiled through tears. "And you'll always be the man who found light in a flower shop." The city began to wake below, oblivious to the war that had just ended. Inside the shop, fresh sunflowers stood in the window, facing the morning. Luca reached out and brushed his thumb over one golden petal. "Always face the light," he murmured. Ellen slipped her fingers through his. "No matter how dark it gets." The bell above Bloom and Vine rang softly as they stepped inside together. Husband and wife, survivors and lovers, choosing peace over power, choosing love over legacy. And as the city's noise rose around them once more, the two of them disappeared into it. Not as a mafia boss and the daughter of his enemy, but as two souls who had finally learned that even in the darkest world, love could still find the light. If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. That's how I'll know you truly liked it. Even if you're watching on your TV, grab a second to join this family of fans who love emotional and heartfelt stories. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more tales like this one.